Hi, I'm Ava, and I want to share a story with you. Like many others, I've had issues with my mother-in-law. It's surprising how many overbearing mother-in-laws there are out there. My mother-in-law, Madison, is one of them. She's pretty entitled and out of touch with reality. I noticed this right after marrying my husband, Asher. Madison wasn't reliant on us, but she acted as if everything we owned was hers, especially if she touched it. She always wanted a lavish lifestyle but never had the money for it. Mostly, my sister-in-law Elena and I managed to steer clear of trouble, mainly because I didn't argue back. But things changed dramatically over one major incident. I had just inherited a vintage car from my grandfather. It meant a lot to me. But to Madison, it was just another item to sell and share the money with her. We had kept the car a secret from Madison, knowing she'd demand we sell it. And true to form, when she found it during a temporary stay at our place due to her house undergoing urgent repairs, her fault, but that's another story, she demanded we sell it. She saw the car in our garage and immediately wanted to know why it was there. I explained it was my inheritance from my late grandfather and had great sentimental value. But Madison had already looked up its value around $200,000 and argued that we should sell it. She claimed we were being selfish by not selling and sharing the inheritance with the family. Her words were completely unreasonable. Firstly, what I do with my belongings is none of Madison's business. I'm not required to share my property with her. I couldn't believe how unreasonable she was being. I didn't know how to respond, so I just let it be, hoping she'd drop the subject. Unfortunately, she was very persistent and kept bringing it up. During a quiet dinner one night, Madison again mentioned selling my car. Out of the blue, she asked if I'd decided to sell it. For the umpteenth time, I told her no. That wasn't happening. She insisted that owning such an expensive car was unacceptable for someone who isn't a millionaire. She argued that my regular Honda was sufficient and that I should think of the family by selling the car and sharing the money. I firmly told Elena that it was my decision what to do with my car. It's a sentimental item I'd always hoped to inherit, and I had no plans to sell it. Madison then turned to Asher, my husband, expecting him to side with her. Usually, Asher found it hard to refuse his mother or set boundaries, but he'd been improving. To Madison's surprise, Asher supported me, telling her that it was my car and my decision. He emphasized that the car held sentimental value and that it wasn't our place to force a sale. Even when Madison argued about the potential money from the sale, Asher stood firm, stating that the decision and the money were mine alone. He told her she was being too intrusive and should not meddle in our personal possessions. Madison seemed deflated by her son's stance, having expected him to back her. Realizing she wasn't going to win this, she still didn't give up trying. Madison kept making sly remarks about how great it would be to have $200,000 in cash from selling my car. Her comments were becoming really bothersome, but I tried to ignore them. I should have been more vigilant because she ended up stealing and selling my car without my knowledge. One morning, as I was getting ready to leave for work, I noticed my vintage car was missing from the garage. I was planning to drive my Honda, but when I opened the garage, the vintage car was gone. It didn't look like a break-in since the garage was open and Asher's car was also not there. He had already left for work. I was in a panic, thinking the car had been stolen. I called off work to deal with this as the car was too precious to lose. In a frenzy, I called Asher to confirm he hadn't taken it. He was surprised and told me he left in his Mustang and the vintage car was there when he left. Asher suggested I calm down and check our security cameras, and to call the police if I found anything. He had to attend an important meeting but told me to call him if I needed anything. Following his advice, I checked the security footage on my phone. What I saw was shocking and infuriating. Madison, my mother-in-law, was the one who took the car. Despite me repeatedly telling her not to touch it, she ignored my requests. I was furious. I decided to call her and record the conversation. I confronted Elena, asking why she took my car. She nonchalantly replied, she just went for a short ride. I demanded she return immediately, emphasizing that I never gave her permission to use it. She brushed it off, saying since I wasn't selling it, she thought she might as well use it, and hung up. I was livid. I considered calling the police but decided to give her a chance to return it undamaged. I didn't want to involve the police unnecessarily, but as time passed without her return, I started rethinking that decision. When Madison finally came in, my car was still missing. What's more, she was carrying shopping bags from expensive brands she couldn't afford. I confronted her, demanding to know where my vintage car was. She casually mentioned it was gone, sold. Her nonchalant attitude and lack of remorse infuriated me further. She had actually sold my beloved vintage car. I struggled to contain my anger, utterly shocked by her audacity. I confronted Elena in disbelief. "You sold my car? Are you kidding me?" She calmly confirmed she had indeed sold my car that very day and used the money to shop. I tried to process what she said. "So, you took my car, sold it, and used the money for yourself?" She nonchalantly replied that it was what she had been advising all along. Selling an expensive car that's just sitting in the garage seemed sensible to her. I was outraged. "Elena, how could you just take and sell my property for your own gain?" She brushed off my anger, saying she planned to use the money for family activities too. She even booked a trip to a ski resort in Alaska, and in her mind, this justified her actions. She suggested that if I behaved, she might share some of the money with me. Her words were pushing me to the edge. It was hard to believe someone could be so entitled as to sell something that wasn't theirs, but with my mother-in-law, it seemed anything was possible. I gave her one last chance, "Madison. Go back to where you sold my car and bring it back. This is your final opportunity to avoid serious trouble." She dismissed my warning, stating the car was sold and part of the money already spent. She had no intention of undoing her actions. I had given her a chance to rectify her mistake, but she blatantly refused. "You're not going to return it, huh?" "I see how it is," I said, realizing Elena was adamant about not bringing back my car. She arrogantly brushed me off and walked away with her shopping bags, not caring to listen to me. I was reeling from her audacity, but I knew getting angry wouldn't solve anything. I had to act quickly to retrieve my car. I did what seemed the only logical step. I called the police and explained the situation. The officers arrived at my house in about 20 minutes. I'd already gathered the car's ownership papers and welcomed them in, showing them the proof and the security footage of my mother-in-law taking the car. Elena came downstairs, feigning surprise at the sight of the police. She played innocent, asking if there was some issue with me. When the officers mentioned the charges for stealing and selling the car, she tried to mislead them, pointing to my Honda in the garage and denying any wrongdoing. The officers clarified they were talking about the vintage car she sold. Elena tried to deny its existence, but we had all the evidence, the paperwork, the video, and even the insurance records. Realizing her initial lies weren't working, she switched tactics. She pretended to be confused, admitting she might have mixed things up about the car. It was almost comical to watch her scramble to concoct stories to cover her actions. Madison claimed she sold the car because she thought I had asked her to, which was a blatant lie. I confronted her. "Why are you lying to the officers, Madison? I never gave you permission to even touch my car, let alone sell it." She tried to turn the situation around, accusing me of trapping her and claiming that I had changed my story, which was completely untrue. I countered her lies by playing the recorded phone call I had with her. In the recording, I clearly told her to bring my car back and not to drive or touch it, clearly showing I never gave her permission to sell it. The officers listened to the recording and were visibly annoyed with Madison's deception. They asked if she had any more lies to tell. Caught in her lies, Madison became flustered, trying to explain herself. But it was too late. The officers informed her she was under arrest for stealing and selling my car. She was visibly scared, tears in her eyes, and tried to come up with more lies, but the officers handcuffed her. In a complete turnaround, Madison then pleaded with me for help. She went from confident to begging, asking me not to let her get arrested, worrying about what people would say. I was resolute, telling her that she committed a crime and needed to be arrested. I was determined to get my car back. Madison tried to downplay the situation, saying it was just a car and suggesting we could work things out without involving the police. But I stood firm. She hadn't considered our family when she sold my car, a piece of my family's history. Her attempts to use the family card were in vain. Madison was in tears, continuing to beg me to let it go, but her actions and lies had crossed the line. Her delusional behavior couldn't excuse her actions. Madison actually believed I would let her off the hook for her terrible actions. She kept pleading with me until the police took her away. Just before getting into the police car, she defiantly yelled that this wasn't over and threatened to involve her son to set me straight. I responded that I was confident her son would make the right decision and she should be more concerned about facing legal consequences. Indeed, her son Asher did go to the police station, but not to rescue her. When Asher called to ask about the situation, I asked him to meet me at the station as I was going to file a formal complaint. I was curious to see Elena's reaction when Asher assessed everything. At the police station, Asher and I confronted Madison. She immediately played the victim, crying and accusing me of hating her enough to send her to jail. Asher asked me what had happened, and I prompted Elena to explain her actions regarding my car. Suddenly, she was silent, unable to think of any excuse. Asher pressed his mom for an explanation. I revealed that she had stolen and sold my car, then returned home with shopping bags, bragging about booking a vacation to Alaska. Asher was shocked and demanded more information. It turned out the police had tracked down the buyer of the car, who revealed it had been damaged after the purchase. This meant we were looking at a substantial lawsuit, possibly involving a claim of $2 million. Asher was dismayed, questioning his mother about her actions and reminding her that he had warned her to stay away from my car. Madison's misguided actions had spiraled into a major legal issue, far beyond a simple family dispute. Shear had never spoken to his mother in such a stern tone before, and Madison was clearly taken aback. Despite her tears and attempts to guilt-trip him, Asher stood firm. Madison desperately pleaded with him to get her out and convince me to drop the lawsuit, claiming she couldn't afford it and feared being broke and jailed. But Asher responded, "Why should I, Mom? You committed the crime. You should have thought about the consequences." Madison kept begging, trying to evoke sympathy, but Asher had reached his limit. He told her that he couldn't forgive her actions and that she was on her own. Meanwhile, Madison was also pleading with me for forgiveness, but I was beyond listening. Leaving the police station, Asher expressed his regret over his mother's actions and encouraged me to continue with the lawsuit to retrieve my car. Eventually, I did get my car back, but it had been involved in an accident and was badly damaged. Repairing a vintage car can be costly, and along with legal fees, the expenses skyrocketed. Madison ended up paying a hefty sum of $2 million for the lawsuit. She had to sell her childhood home and take on debts. It was a tough situation for her, but she had lost our sympathy. Asher made it clear we no longer wanted any contact with her, leading to her breaking down again. News of her arrest and the lawsuit spread quickly, resulting in her friends distancing themselves and her family's anger. It was evident that the rest of the family had more sense. We've remained out of contact with Madison. The lawsuit has been settled, and I managed to get my car repaired by a skilled mechanic, paid for by Madison. The car was so well repaired that it looked as though it had never been damaged. So, I got my car back in great condition, while Madison lost her home and is now living alone in a rented apartment, isolated and in need of company.